And these little subtle things don't mean a whole lot to some people, but what you saw there is really odd that it would be that way, because it goes on to tell us that they are the spirits of devils, working miracles which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. Now, what we're trying to do in this little weekend is trying to, just focus on one particular area. As I mentioned, there's so many areas. And so in talking about this in the last couple of days, we've been introduced to this battle, but we know that there's something supernatural behind this battle. It actually involves demons, spirits of devils, and they're drawing them. Now, we know from the past that there's always been Antichrist. We showed you on Friday night. There's been many Antichrists. But when you take a look at how it shows up in leadership, it's rather bizarre. For example, on all the documentaries on Hitler, there's always some kind of reference to this unexplained power that he would have over people. And the fact that when he was pretty much reserved to, but there was something that would come on him when he would get up and speak to those thousands and thousands of Germans. And to be honest with you, he was consumed with a spirit. I believe that, and this is no new thing, but I think just very obvious, Hitler was demon-possessed. And there's spirits at work in that authority system. But you know what's amazing is now Hitler's dead and gone, and yet there's others that have stepped to the plate, and such as one is the current leader of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Now, where he's going to go, nobody knows. But I think it was very, very interesting this afternoon as I was putting my message together. I'd read this interesting thing. It says, like Hitler, Ahmadinejad was not widely known when he entered the presidential election campaign, as he had never run for office before. He'd only been mayor for Tehran for 2 years, and that position was appointed to him. He wasn't elected there. So he was a nobody, and overnight became a somebody. Now, the area that he rules over is an area that we proved to you yesterday, or was it this? Yeah, it was yesterday. That is a highly, highly clear national area that will come against Israel in Ezekiel 38 and 39, which could technically be any time. And this area is a conjunction with Russia, where Persia joins forces with Russia to attack Israel. There's a spirit behind this, though, and this spirit is a stronghold. It's a demonic stronghold. And there's some unexplained reason why this is happening. Now, keep in mind, folks, that back in 77, Iran was our buddy. It was Israel's buddy. We had great relationship with Iran. And under the administration of Jimmy Carter, you remember this, there was the Iran Revolution. Almost exactly what happened to Egypt last year happened to them back then. And in no time, suddenly we became the great Satan in the eyes of Iran. Now they are Israel's number one enemy, and they're America's number one enemy. What happened there? Well, there's all kinds of evidence, and I wish we could do this. It's like peeling an onion, though, just layer after layer. But I want you to understand something happened then. Something very strong happened. The result of that, though, is that this area became once again predominantly ruled by a principality. That principality is actually called the prince. The principality, he's called a prince. He's called the Prince of Persia. Now, I know this is going to sound a little flaky and a little weird to some of you, but I'm just taking this right out of the Bible. Now, this entity has been involved in spiritual authority over that area and continues to be up to this very day. Now, if you were not here yesterday, we clarified this, that Persia has always been called Persia for thousands of years. That's the book of Esther is about Persia. Okay? And it's always been called Persia to 1935, when they changed their name Republic of Iran. It's the exact same land, the exact same mass of land, exact same place, they just changed their name. But biblically, this is Persia. Now, when the Bible speaks about this entity, it literally refers to a spirit power, a real entity, a real being, a prince, a principality, a demon force over this region. Now, it just so happens that this region is so powerfully influenced by this that even people that work in the missionary realm classify that area as the 1040 window. It is the area that it covers a literal physical spot on the map. It is literally identifiable as something uniquely bizarre. Its location starts from 10 degrees to 40 degrees north of the equator. It stretches all the way from North Africa across China, and it's strongly anti-Christian. I'm sure many of you, if you keep up on this stuff, you know this is where the intensely heated issues are. This is the least evangelized location on the planet. It is where more Christians are hated and persecuted and martyred than any place on the earth. Right this very moment, Christians are being tortured, killed, persecuted in this 1040 window. Now, I want you to look at this, and folks, this is almost too real to be true. But you can't get away from this. When you look at the very center part of this region, known as the 1040 window, the very heart, the center of that region is Iran or Persia. Over this region, over this area known as Iran, the Persian realm is called a prince, a demon spirit, a principality that is powerful, probably one of the most powerful entities in the dark realm of the spirit world. Now, I know I kind of freak some of you out by saying all this stuff, but I'm just staying with the scripture on this. I'm not going to get really weird, so hold on to this for a second. Now, obviously, Daniel understood all this. Remember when Daniel started praying, and they saw that he was praying, so they went to the authority who headed up this area and asked him to make it illegal to pray. How many know there was a spirit? Those men were actually doing that, but there was something behind that. There's a spirit behind that. You know, all the stuff about getting prayer out of the school, getting the Bible out of the school, getting in God we trust off our coins, all this. Folks, you got to understand, that's not just some man coming up with a fussing argument. There is literally a battle going on. It's a battle that wants to try to dethrone God, to take God. That's why there's this argument across the country. Anytime a cross is set up, they got to tear the cross down. We can't have a cross. You know the reason why? Because the cross is an offense to hell. And so cities are being sued because they have a lighted cross on the water tower. Well, there's something behind that. I know some people think it's just stupid to think like that, but the Bible teaches that. Now let's go to the story in Daniel 10, and let's take a look at it for a moment. They got to understand, Daniel has been on a 21-day time of fasting. He's been praying. He had just read the book of Jeremiah, and Jeremiah spoke about the restoration and gave the actual number of days or years that they would be in bondage to Babylon. And so Daniel's reading that. It dawns on him. He can remember hearing Jeremiah as a little boy. Daniel stood there in the streets and heard this weeping prophet telling Israel to turn from their sins, and if they wouldn't, they would be taken captive by the Babylonians. And he heard this, and he'd go to his mom and dad and say, this scares me, is this going to happen? And they would try to comfort his heart, but Daniel saw what happened. He lost his mom and dad. He lost his brothers and sisters and friends and all the rest. Daniel seen that as a little boy. Now Daniel's an old man. He's in his 80s. And he's reading Jeremiah's writings. And he's remembering how Jeremiah preached, and he's reading that God would have them there for a certain amount of years. And all of a sudden, Daniel gets his calculations out and figures it up and says, you know what? We're there. It's time for us to come back to our land. So he begins to make this a matter of prayer, and he begins to seek God about some amazing things.